When a billionaire's 5-year-old daughter runs into a stranger's arms on Christmas Eve, he doesn't expect that one impulsive hug will shatter the walls he's built around his heart for 3 years. The crying woman in the worn coat has nothing. No money, no family, no hope. He has everything except what she accidentally shows him. The warmth his mansion has been missing since his wife died. But inviting her into their lives means risking the carefully controlled world he's created to protect his daughter. Some decisions change everything. This is one of them. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story reaches. Hit that like button and stay until the end because what happens next will surprise you. The marble floors of Celestine Plaza gleamed under 10,000 twinkling lights, each one reflecting off surfaces that cost more than most people earned in a year. Adrian Hayes walked through the Christmas chaos with the practiced detachment of someone who'd stopped noticing beauty a long time ago. His daughter's small hand gripped his finger, the only thing tethering him to the present moment. "Daddy, can we see the big tree again?" Ellie's voice barely cut through the noise. Somewhere, a choir sang carols that Adrian had learned to tune out the same way he tuned out board meetings and business calls that didn't matter. Everything had become background noise after Sarah died. Everything except Ellie. "We saw it twice already, sweetheart." "But it's so pretty." She tugged at his hand, her red coat, custom-made, ridiculously expensive, swishing as she tried to pull him toward the atrium. "Please?" Adrian checked his watch. 6:47. They'd been here almost 2 hours. His phone had buzzed 8 times with emails he was ignoring, and his head of security was probably having an aneurysm watching them move through this crowd without a proper detail. But Ellie had asked to see them all at Christmas, and Adrian had run out of excuses to say no. 3 years. 3 years of waking up alone in a bed too big for one person, of eating breakfast across from an empty chair, of building a company into an empire because working 18-hour days meant he didn't have to think about coming home to silence. 3 years of watching his daughter grow up with only half the parent she deserved. The guilt sat in his chest like a stone he'd swallowed and couldn't cough up. "All right," he said, letting her pull him toward the center court. 5 more minutes. Ellie beamed, and for a second, Adrian saw Sarah and her smile, the same brightness, the same joy that used to fill their apartment before they had money, before the company exploded, before cancer decided that 31 was old enough to die. He pushed the thought away. He'd gotten good at that. The tree stood 70 feet tall, decorated with ornaments that probably cost more than Adrian's first car. People clustered around it, taking photos, laughing, doing all the things families did during the holidays. Adrian watched from a distance, his hand resting on Ellie's shoulder as she pressed her nose against the railing and stared upward with wonder he couldn't remember feeling himself. "It's magic," she whispered. "It's expensive pine and LED lights." She looked up at him with those huge brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and frowned. "You don't believe in magic anymore?" The question hit harder than it should have. Adrian opened his mouth, searching for an answer that wouldn't sound as cynical as he felt, when Ellie's attention suddenly snapped away from the tree. "Daddy." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Daddy, look." She was pointing across the food court, her small finger aimed at the coffee stand near the north entrance. Adrian followed her gaze, squinting past the crowd of last-minute shoppers hauling bags stuffed with things nobody needed. At first, he didn't see anything unusual. Just the typical Christmas Eve chaos, teenagers on dates, exhausted parents bribing kids with sugar, elderly couples sharing hot chocolate and probably reminiscing about when their own kids were small. Then he saw her. She stood alone near the edge of the seating area, one hand gripping a worn shopping bag, the other pressed against her mouth like she was trying to hold something inside. Her coat was thin, too thin for December, and even from 30 feet away, Adrian could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying, not the delicate, camera-ready crying of someone who wanted attention. This was the kind of crying people did when they thought nobody was watching, raw and silent and desperate. "That lady is sad," Ellie said quietly. "Why is she crying?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she—" But Ellie was already moving. "Ellie, wait!" She slipped out from under his hand and took off running before Adrian could grab her. He swore under his breath and pushed through the crowd, trying to keep his 5-year-old daughter in sight as she darted between shoppers like a missile locked on target. "Ellie, stop!" She didn't stop. She ran straight toward the crying woman and wrapped her arms around her waist before Adrian could cross half the distance between them. The woman jumped, startled, her tear-streaked face going from shock to confusion as she looked down at the small girl hugging her like they were old friends. Adrian reached them 10 seconds later, breathing harder than he should have been. "I'm so sorry, Ellie, you can't run off like that." But Ellie wasn't listening. She was looking up at the woman with that same earnest expression she got when she found injured birds in the garden or tried to rescue caterpillars from the pool. "Why are you crying?" Ellie asked. "Are you hurt?" The woman stared at her, then at Adrian, then back at Ellie. Up close, Adrian could see she was younger than he'd thought. Maybe 30, maybe younger. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. She wore jeans that had been washed too many times and sneakers that had seen better years. Everything about her screamed broke in a way Adrian hadn't thought about in a long time. The woman's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just having a hard day." "Do you need a hug?" Ellie asked, tightening her grip. "My daddy says hugs make sad feelings smaller." Adrian felt his face heat up. He definitely had never said anything that sentimental, but calling his daughter a liar in front of a stranger seemed worse than letting it slide. The woman's eyes filled with fresh tears. She knelt down slowly, carefully, like she was afraid sudden movements might shatter something, and wrapped her arms around Ellie. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed that." They stayed like that for several seconds, his daughter and this stranger holding on to each other in the middle of a Christmas Eve crowd, while Adrian stood there feeling like he'd accidentally walked into someone else's moment. Finally, the woman pulled back, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. "I'm sorry. Your daughter is very sweet." "She's also very impulsive," Adrian said, trying to inject some normalcy into the situation. "Ellie, you can't just run up to people you don't know." "But she was sad, Daddy." "That doesn't mean—" He stopped, looking at the woman who was now trying to compose herself and failing. Her hands were shaking, her breathing was uneven. Whatever was wrong, it wasn't small. Adrian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Do you need help?" The words came out awkward, rusty. He wasn't good at this anymore, at caring about strangers, at stepping outside the bubble of money and control he'd built around himself and Ellie. The woman shook her head quickly. No, I'm fine. Really, thank you, but—" "You don't look fine," Ellie said, with the blunt honesty only children could get away with. "You look really sad." Ellie. "Well, she does." The woman let out a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been another sob. "You're right. I am really sad." She looked at Adrian, and he saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. A kind of resignation, like she'd already accepted that tonight was going to break her, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. She gestured vaguely at the mall around them, at the families and the decorations and the cheerful chaos. "I just needed to be around people tonight. Around happiness, I guess, even if it's not mine." The words hung in the air between them. Adrian should have walked away, should have taken Ellie's hand and headed home to the mansion where they'd eat dinner prepared by someone else, and watch Christmas movies in a theater room that cost more than this woman probably earned in 5 years. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But Ellie was looking at him with those eyes again, and the woman was standing there trying not to fall apart in public, and somewhere in the back of Adrian's mind he heard Sarah's voice from 3 years ago when she'd made him promise to stay human even after she was gone. He sighed. "Have you eaten?" The woman blinked. "What?" "Dinner. Have you eaten dinner?" No, but oh. There's a cafe on the second floor, quieter than down here." Adrian pulled out his wallet, then stopped, realizing how that looked. "I mean, if you want company. Ellie's been dragging me around this mall for 2 hours, and I could use coffee before my brain completely shuts down." It was a terrible lie. He'd had 3 espressos already, and his brain was running on the same high-frequency anxiety that had powered him through every day since Sarah died. The woman looked at him like he'd just offered her something impossible. "You don't have to—" "I know I don't have to, but my daughter apparently thinks you need a hug and supervision, and I've learned it's easier to just go along with her ideas than argue." Ellie grinned, vindicated. The woman hesitated, glancing between them. Adrian could see her weighing the offer, trying to figure out if it was genuine or pity or some kind of setup. He didn't blame her. If their positions were reversed, he'd be suspicious too. Just coffee, he added, and maybe those overpriced pastries Ellie keeps staring at. I wasn't staring, Ellie protested. You were absolutely staring. The woman's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Okay, she said quietly. Just coffee. Thank you. The cafe on the second floor was one of those aggressively modern places with exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of spot that charged $8 for coffee and called it artisanal. Adrian found a corner table away from the windows, while Ellie dragged the woman toward the pastry case to show her which ones looked best. He watched them together, his daughter chattering away, the stranger listening with a patience that felt genuine, and tried to remember the last time he'd sat down with someone who wasn't trying to pitch him an investment or ask for a favor. They returned a few minutes later with a tray loaded with more sugar than any three people needed. The woman carried hot chocolate instead of coffee, her hands wrapped around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. I'm Mia, by the way, she said, sitting down across from him. Mia Carter. I should have said that before, but Adrian Hayes. He didn't offer his hand. Handshakes felt wrong here. And you've already met Ellie. Hi. Ellie waved from the seat next to Mia, already halfway through a chocolate croissant. Mia smiled at her, and Adrian noticed how it transformed her face, how the sadness that had been crushing her outside pulled back just enough to let something lighter through. So, Adrian said, then stopped, realizing he had no idea how to continue. What did you say to a crying stranger you just invited to coffee? How's your emotional breakdown going? Having a rough Christmas? Mia saved him. I know this is weird, she said. You don't know me. I don't know you. Your daughter just... She's very sweet. She doesn't usually tackle strangers. I wasn't tackling. I was hugging. You were definitely tackling. Ellie made a face at him and took another bite of her croissant. Mia laughed, actually laughed, and Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Some pressure valve he didn't know was closed, cracking open just slightly. I'm sorry for falling apart out there, Mia said, her smile fading. I don't usually... I try not to be that person. The one crying in public on Christmas Eve. Bad day? Adrian asked, then immediately felt stupid. Obviously it was a bad day. People didn't cry in malls unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Bad year, actually. Mia stared into her hot chocolate like she might find answers at the bottom. Bad couple of years, if I'm being honest. Adrian waited. He'd learned a long time ago that silence gave people space to talk if they wanted to, and Mia looked like someone who'd been holding words inside for too long. My mom's sick, she said finally. Terminal. She's been sick for a while, but today the doctors said... They said, it's time to start thinking about hospice. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Mia nodded like she'd heard them before and knew they didn't really help. I spent the last 2 years taking care of her, she continued. Dropped out of school, sold everything I had, moved back home. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I stayed positive, maybe things would turn around. Maybe she'd get better. Her voice cracked on the last word. But she's not getting better. She's getting worse, and I'm out of money, out of options, and completely alone because everyone I used to know has moved on with their lives while I've been stuck in this nightmare. She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth again. Sorry. God, I'm sorry. You don't need to hear all this. It's fine, Adrian said, and meant it. There was something almost refreshing about her honesty, about the way she wasn't trying to package her pain into something polite and manageable. Do you have Christmas presents? Ellie asked suddenly. We saw lots of people with presents. Mia looked at her, caught off guard by the question. No, sweetheart, I don't. Why not? Ellie, that's not... Because I don't have anyone to give presents to, Mia said quietly. It's just me and my mom now, and she's too sick to really... She doesn't need presents. She needs medicine and help and things I can't afford to give her. Ellie processed this with the seriousness of someone much older. That's really sad. Yeah, Mia agreed. It really is. Adrian felt like he was watching something he shouldn't be witnessing, this raw exchange between his daughter and a woman who'd been crying alone in a mall 20 minutes ago. Part of him wanted to change the subject, steer them towards safer conversational territory. But another part, the part that sounded like Sarah, told him to shut up and listen. "What were you studying?" he asked, "before you dropped out." Mia looked surprised that he'd asked. "Art. Graphic design specifically. I wanted to work for an agency, maybe do freelance illustration on the side." "Stupid dreams." "Why stupid?" "Because they don't pay bills. Because I spent 4 years learning how to make things look pretty instead of learning how to survive in the real world." She shook her head. "My mom used to say I had talent, but mothers are supposed to say that. It doesn't mean it's true." Adrian studied her across the table, the exhaustion in her face, the worn-down quality of someone who'd been fighting too long without winning. He recognized it. He'd seen it in his own reflection often enough. "What brought you to the mall tonight?" he asked. "Honestly, I couldn't stand being in my apartment anymore. Everything there reminds me of what I've lost, what I'm about to lose. I thought maybe being around people celebrating would help, like if I stood close enough to happiness, some of it might rub off." She laughed bitterly. Clearly, that worked out great. "Well, you got a hug from Ellie. That's worth something." "It's worth everything," Mia said softly, looking at his daughter. "She's lucky to have you." Adrian almost laughed at that. Lucky. Ellie had lost her mother at 2 years old and been raised by a father who barely knew how to hold a conversation anymore, who hired people to do everything from cooking dinner to picking out birthday presents because he was too busy building a company to fill the hole in his life. I'm not sure she'd agree with that assessment. "Why not?" "Because I'm not enough," Adrian wanted to say. "Because I'm just one person trying to do the job of two and failing every single day. Because I've been running on autopilot for 3 years and I'm terrified that one morning I'll wake up and realize I've completely forgotten how to feel anything. Because I work too much," he said instead. "I'm not around as much as I should be." "But you're here now, on Christmas Eve, taking your daughter to see decorations and buying her overpriced pastries." Mia smiled. "That counts for something." "Does it?" "It counts for a lot." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cafe bustled with holiday energy, people laughing, children running, the espresso machine hissing and grinding. Normal people living normal lives, oblivious to the 2 broken strangers and 1 5-year-old sharing a table in the corner. Ellie had finished her croissant and was now systematically organizing the sugar packets by color, humming something that might have been Jingle Bells, or might have been completely made up. "What about you?" Mia asked. "What do you do when you're not wrangling runaway daughters in malls?" Adrian hesitated. This was always the awkward part, the moment when people found out who he was and everything changed. Suddenly, they wanted something. Suddenly, they got weird. "I run a company," he said carefully. "Investment firm. We do acquisitions, venture capital, that kind of thing." "Sounds complicated." "It is." "Do you like it?" No one had asked him that in years. People asked if business was good, if deals were closing, if the portfolio was performing. No one asked if he actually liked what he did. "I'm good at it," he said, which wasn't an answer. Mia nodded like she understood. "That's not the same thing, is it?" "No, it's not." She didn't push, and Adrian felt grateful for that. Instead, she turned her attention back to Ellie, who was now building a small pyramid out of creamer containers. "She's wonderful," Mia said. "How old?" 5. Just turned 5 last month. "And her mom?" "Died 3 years ago. Cancer." He said it flatly, without emotion, the way he'd said it 100 times before. It was easier that way, treating it like a fact rather than a wound that still bled every time he looked at Ellie and saw Sarah's face staring back at him. Mia's expression softened. "I'm so sorry." "Everyone's sorry doesn't change anything." The words came out harsher than he intended, but Mia didn't flinch. She just nodded, accepting his bitterness the same way she'd accepted everything else. "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." They sat there another hour, talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. Mia told stories about her childhood, about growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone and privacy was a myth. Adrian found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone. How he sometimes forgot what Sarah's voice sounded like. How he panicked every time Ellie got sick because he couldn't survive losing another person he loved. Ellie eventually fell asleep against Mia's shoulder, worn out from running around the mall and consuming her body weight in chocolate. Mia didn't seem to mind, just adjusted slightly to make sure the little girl was comfortable. She trusts you, Adrian observed. Kids are good at knowing who's safe. Are you safe? Mia looked at him, really looked at him, and Adrian saw something flicker in her eyes, surprise maybe, or recognition. I don't know. Are you? Fair question. Adrian wasn't sure he was safe for anyone anymore, including himself. Finally, he checked his watch and realized it was almost 9. The mall would be closing soon, and they'd been sitting in this cafe long enough that the staff was starting to give them pointed looks. We should probably go, he said, gently shaking Ellie awake. Mia stood, gathering her worn shopping bag. Thank you for this. For the coffee and the conversation. I really needed it. Do you... Adrian stopped, the words catching in his throat. Do you have somewhere to go tonight? My apartment. It's small, but it's home. And for Christmas? Tomorrow? Mia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll be at the hospital with my mom. The nurses said I can stay as long as I want. Ellie was fully awake now, rubbing her eyes and looking between them with that worried expression she got when she sensed adults were sad. You should come to our house, she said suddenly. Adrian's stomach dropped. Ellie. For Christmas dinner, Ellie continued, completely ignoring him. We have lots of food and a really big tree, and Daddy gets lonely even though he pretends he doesn't. Ellie, that's not... Please. Ellie looked at Mia with those devastating eyes. You said you don't have anyone. We don't really have anyone either. We could all be alone together. Mia looked stricken, torn between gratitude and embarrassment. Sweetheart, that's so kind, but I couldn't possibly... Why not? Ellie demanded. Because... Mia glanced at Adrian, clearly desperate for him to rescue her from this situation. Because your dad probably has plans, and I'm just someone you met at the mall, and it would be weird. Adrian knew he should back her up. Should make some polite excuse about how they appreciated the thought, but Christmas was family time and they barely knew each other, and it was better if everyone just stuck to their own plans. But he was looking at Mia, at the loneliness radiating off her like heat, at the resignation in her face that said she'd already accepted spending Christmas alone in a hospital room watching her mother die. And he heard himself say something completely insane. 6 o'clock tomorrow, I'll send a car. Mia's eyes went wide. What? Christmas dinner, 6 o'clock. Give me your address and I'll send a car to pick you up. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. Adrian pulled out his phone. What's your address? Adrian, this is crazy. You don't even know me. You're right. I don't. But Ellie does, apparently, and she's usually a pretty good judge of character. He looked at his daughter, who was beaming like she'd just won the lottery. So, what's your address? Mia stared at him for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of elaborate prank. Finally, she rattled off an address in a part of the city Adrian knew was rough. The kind of neighborhood where people triple-locked their doors and didn't walk alone after dark. He typed it into his phone without comment. 6 o'clock, he repeated. Car will be there at 5:30 to give you plenty of time. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ellie urged. Say yes, say yes, say yes. Mia looked at her, then at Adrian, then back at Ellie. Something in her face cracked open. That careful control she'd been maintaining all evening finally breaking under the weight of a 5-year-old's earnest invitation. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Thank you. Ellie threw her arms around Mia's waist, and Adrian watched the two of them hold each other while Christmas music played over the cafe speakers and the last shoppers hurried past toward the parking garage. He had no idea what he'd just agreed to. No idea if this was kindness or insanity or just the desperate act of a lonely man who'd spent 3 years trying to convince himself that isolation was the same thing as safety. But standing there watching his daughter smile wider than she had in months, Adrian thought maybe, just maybe, he'd done something right for once. They walked Mia to the parking garage, Ellie holding her hand the entire way. When they reached the elevator that would take her down to the lower levels where the older, cheaper cars lived, Mia knelt down and hugged Ellie one more time. Thank you for the hug earlier, she said, and for inviting me tomorrow. You're very special, you know that? I know, Ellie said matter-of-factly. My daddy tells me all the time. Mia looked up at Adrian, her eyes shining with tears she was trying not to shed. "You're raising an incredible kid." "I'm trying." "No." She stood up, meeting his gaze directly. "You're succeeding." The elevator dinged. Mia stepped inside, lifting her hand in a small wave as the doors began to close. At the last second, just before the gap disappeared completely, she called out, "Thank you for seeing me tonight. For actually seeing me." Then she was gone, and Adrian was left standing in a concrete parking garage with his daughter's hand in his, and the distinct feeling that his carefully controlled life had just tilted sideways in a way he didn't entirely understand. "She's nice," Ellie said as they walked toward where their car was parked, a black Tesla that cost more than most people's houses. "Yeah," Adrian agreed. "She is. Are you glad I hugged her?" He thought about that. Thought about Mia's tears and her honesty, and the way she'd made him feel something other than numb for the first time in 3 years. "Yeah, sweetheart, I am." Ellie squeezed his hand. "Good, because I think she needed us, and I think maybe we needed her too." Adrian didn't respond to that. Couldn't respond, because his 5-year-old daughter had just articulated something he'd been trying not to admit to himself all evening. They drove home in silence, the city lights streaming past the windows, Christmas decorations blurring into rivers of color. Adrian kept thinking about tomorrow, about a stranger coming to his house, about breaking the routine he'd maintained so carefully, about the possibility that letting someone new into their lives might be the best or worst decision he'd made in years. He wouldn't know until it was too late to take it back. But as they pulled through the gates of his estate and Ellie started chattering about what they should make for dinner tomorrow, Adrian realized he was actually looking forward to Christmas for the first time since Sarah died. That had to mean something, even if he had no idea what. Adrian woke up at 5:30 on Christmas morning to the sound of Ellie jumping on his bed. "It's Christmas! It's Christmas! Santa came!" He groaned and pulled a pillow over his face, but she was relentless, yanking it away and bouncing harder until the mattress shook like a trampoline. "Ellie, it's barely dawn." "But Santa came! I heard him." "Well, I didn't actually hear him, but the presents are there, and that means he came, and we have to open them right now." Adrian cracked one eye open and looked at his daughter, who was wearing penguin pajamas and had bedhead that defied physics. Despite the ungodly hour, he felt something close to amusement. 5 more minutes. "No, now." She grabbed his arm and pulled with surprising strength for someone who weighed 40 pounds soaking wet. Adrian let himself be dragged out of bed, his bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor as Ellie sprinted toward the door. "Wait," he called after her. "Let me at least put pants on." "You're wearing pants." "Real pants, not pajama pants." She made an exasperated sound that reminded him painfully of Sarah, who used to get that same tone when Adrian was being deliberately difficult. He grabbed a pair of jeans from his closet and followed his daughter downstairs, where she was already tearing into the mountain of wrapped boxes under the tree. The living room looked like a magazine spread, perfectly decorated, professionally lit, every surface gleaming. Adrian's housekeeper had spent hours getting it ready yesterday, making sure everything looked flawless for a holiday that Adrian had been dreading. Now he stood in the doorway watching Ellie rip through presents worth more than most people's monthly salary, and all he could think about was Mia crying alone in that mall. "Daddy, look! A bike!" Ellie was circling a red bicycle with training wheels, her face lit up with joy. Adrian had ordered it 3 weeks ago from some boutique shop in Manhattan that charged obscene prices for things you could get at Target. "Do you like it?" "I love it. Can we ride it now?" "It's December. There's ice on the driveway." "Spring then?" "Spring works." She hugged him fiercely, then dove back into the presents. Adrian watched her for a while, trying to feel the happiness he was supposed to feel, the parental satisfaction of giving his kid a good Christmas. Instead, he felt hollow. By 7 o'clock, wrapping paper covered every surface, and Ellie was sitting in the middle of the carnage eating chocolate from her stocking. Adrian had made coffee, terrible coffee, but coffee nonetheless, and was scrolling through his phone when he remembered what he'd done last night. He'd invited a complete stranger to Christmas dinner, a stranger who was broke and desperate and probably thought he was insane or pitying her or both. What the hell had he been thinking? You didn't just invite random people into your home, especially when you had a 5-year-old daughter to protect. There were protocols, background checks, common sense. But then he thought about Mia's face when Elliot asked her to come. about the way hope had flickered in her eyes like a candle that had almost gone out, and he knew he couldn't take it back. He was committed to this insanity. "What time is the lady coming?" Ellie asked, looking up from her chocolate haul. 6 o'clock, and her name is Mia. Mia, Ellie repeated, testing it out. "That's pretty. Do you think she'll like my new toys?" "I think she'll be happy you're excited to see her." "I am excited. She's really nice, Daddy. She smells like vanilla, and when she hugged me, she didn't let go too fast like some people do." Adrian didn't know how to respond to that, so he just ruffled her hair and went to make more terrible coffee. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of cartoons and sugar crashes. Around noon, Adrian called his chef, because of course he had a chef on retainer, and told him to prepare dinner for 3. "Traditional Christmas meal," Adrian said. "Turkey, all the sides. Make it warm." There was a pause on the other end. "Warm, sir?" "You know, homey, like someone's grandmother made it." "Your grandmother, or—" "Just make it not look like it came from a restaurant, Marcus. Can you do that?" Another pause. "I'll do my best, sir." Adrian hung up and immediately regretted the entire conversation. He had no idea how to do this, how to make his massive, sterile mansion feel like somewhere a person might actually want to spend Christmas. Everything in this house was designed to impress, to demonstrate success, to keep people at a distance. He walked through the rooms trying to see them through Mia's eyes. The living room with furniture that cost more than a car. The dining room with a table that could seat 20. The kitchen with appliances he'd never learned to use. The whole place felt like a museum, beautiful but untouchable. By 3 o'clock, he was second-guessing everything. By 4, he was actively panicking. "Ellie, maybe we should cancel." She looked up from where she was playing with a new dollhouse. "Why?" "Because I don't think this is a good idea. Mia probably doesn't want to come anyway. She was just being polite." "You sent her a car. I can call the car back." "Daddy." Ellie stood up and put her hands on her hips in a pose she'd definitely learned from watching him in business meetings. "You invited her. She said yes. You can't take it back now. That's rude." "Since when do you know about rude?" "Since always. Mrs. Patterson says you should never go back on your word." Mrs. Patterson was Ellie's teacher, apparently a moral authority on par with judges and philosophers. "So we're not canceling." Adrian looked at his 5-year-old daughter and wondered when exactly she'd become the adult in this relationship. "Fine. We're not canceling." "Good." She went back to her dollhouse like the matter was settled. At 5:15, Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, expecting it to be Mia calling to back out, already preparing his "it's totally fine, no worries" speech. Instead, it was his driver. "Mr. Hayes, I'm at the address you provided. There's no answer at the door." Adrian's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, no answer?" "I've knocked several times, sir. The building superintendent says the tenant hasn't been home all day." Of course. Of course she wasn't there. She'd probably woken up this morning and realized how crazy the whole situation was and decided to avoid the awkwardness by just not showing up. Smart woman. "Did the superintendent say where she went?" "To the hospital, sir. Apparently she goes there most days." The hospital, her mother. Adrian had completely forgotten about her mother dying in some hospital room while they sat in a cafe drinking overpriced hot chocolate. Which hospital? He didn't say. "Would you like me to wait?" Adrian checked his watch, 5:20. Even if they found her right now, she'd never make it by 6. "No, come back. It's fine." He hung up and stood there in his enormous kitchen feeling like an idiot. What had he expected? That a woman dealing with a dying parent would drop everything to have dinner with strangers just because a 5-year-old asked nicely? "Where's Mia?" Ellie appeared in the doorway, already wearing the fancy dress someone had bought for her. Adrian couldn't remember who. "She's not coming, sweetheart." Ellie's face fell. "Why not?" "She had something important to do. Her mom is sick, remember? She needed to be at the hospital." "But it's Christmas." "Sick people don't stop being sick on Christmas." Ellie processed this with the kind of serious concentration she usually reserved for complex Lego instructions. "Can we go get her?" "What? Can we go to the hospital and bring her here?" "Ellie, we don't even know which hospital." "So we'll call and find out." Adrian started to explain why that wouldn't work. HIPAA laws, privacy concerns, the fact that you couldn't just show up at a hospital demanding to see someone. but Ellie was already running to get her coat. "Come on, Daddy, we have to hurry." He should have said no. Should have explained that real life didn't work like the movies where grand gestures solved everything. But he was looking at his daughter's hopeful face and thinking about Mia sitting alone in a hospital room on Christmas Day. And before he could stop himself, he was grabbing his own coat and keys. "Get in the car." Ellie cheered and ran for the garage. It took 4 phone calls and 1 mildly illegal use of his company's connections, but Adrian finally tracked down which hospital Mia's mother was in. St. Catherine's on the east side. 20 minutes in traffic, 15 if he ignored some speed limits. He made it in 12. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered across spaces marked for staff and visitors who had nowhere better to be on Christmas. Adrian pulled into a spot near the emergency entrance and killed the engine. "Stay here." "But I want to see Mia." "Ellie, hospitals have rules about kids visiting. Just wait in the car. I'll be right back." She crossed her arms and pouted, but didn't argue further. Adrian locked the doors and headed inside, where fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell immediately made him want to turn around and leave. He hated hospitals, hated the sounds, the smells, the memories they dragged up of sitting in rooms just like these watching Sarah fade away while doctors spoke in careful, clinical voices about things like palliative care and making her comfortable. The woman at the information desk looked up as he approached, her face showing the special kind of exhaustion that came from working holidays. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for a patient. Last name Carter. Her daughter should be with her. Mia Carter?" The woman typed something into her computer, frowning. "I'm sorry, sir. Visiting hours ended at 4. Family only after that." "I am family." She gave him a look that said she'd heard that line before. "Are you listed as an approved visitor?" "No, but then I can't help you." "Hospital policy." Adrian felt frustration building in his chest. He could buy this hospital if he wanted to, could write a check that would fund their entire wing. But standing here in his expensive coat with his expensive watch, he was just another person asking for special treatment. "Listen," he said, trying to sound reasonable instead of desperate. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I just need to speak with Mia Carter for 2 minutes. She's expecting me." "Is she?" "Yes. We had plans tonight and she didn't show up. I'm worried." The woman's expression softened slightly. "If she's expecting you, she can come down here to meet you. What's her cell number?" Adrian realized with a sinking feeling that he didn't have Mia's cell number. Hadn't even thought to ask for it last night. He'd just given her his address and assumed everything would work out. "I don't have it." "Then I really can't help you, sir. I'm sorry." He was about to argue further when someone behind him said, "Adrian?" He turned and found Mia standing there in the hallway, wearing the same worn coat from last night and looking completely shocked to see him. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you. You didn't show up." She glanced at the receptionist, then back at him. "Can we talk outside?" They walked out into the cold December evening, their breath fogging in the parking lot lights. Somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing. Christmas carols drifted from a car radio. "I'm so sorry," Mia said immediately. "I completely lost track of time. Mom had a bad episode this morning, and the nurses needed help, and I forgot. It's okay." "It's not okay. You sent a car and made dinner plans, and I wasn't even there. You must think I'm completely unreliable." Adrian looked at her, at the exhaustion etched into her face, at the guilt in her eyes that said she was already beating herself up worse than he ever could. "I think you're dealing with something impossible," he said. "And I think showing up to a stranger's house for dinner probably wasn't your top priority when your mom needed you." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to come, I really did. Ellie was so sweet to invite me, and you were so kind, and I didn't want you to think I didn't appreciate it." "I don't think that. Being here with her, sometimes I lose track of everything else. The whole world could end, and I wouldn't notice because all I can focus on is her breathing, making sure she's comfortable, that she's not alone." Her voice broke on the last word. Adrian made a decision. "Come with me." "What?" "Right now. Come have dinner with us." Mia shook her head. "I can't leave her. For 2 hours, just 2 hours. The nurses will call if anything changes." "Adrian, when's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I don't remember." When's the last time you did something that wasn't watching someone die? The question was harsh, but it needed to be. Mia stared at him, and he could see her trying to come up with an answer and failing. You can't help her if you destroy yourself, Adrian said more gently. Trust me. I learned that the hard way. 2 hours? 2 hours. We'll eat, you'll spend time with Ellie, who's been asking about you all day, and then I'll drive you back myself. Mia looked back at the hospital entrance, clearly torn. I should check with the nurse first. So check. She went back inside while Adrian returned to the car, where Ellie immediately started pelting him with questions. Did you find her? Is she coming? Can I see her now? She's checking on her mom. Then she's coming with us. Really? Ellie's face lit up like the Christmas tree back home. Really, really? Really, really? 5 minutes later, Mia emerged from the hospital and walked toward the car. Adrian got out to open the door for her, and she slid into the back seat where Ellie immediately launched herself into a hug. You came! Daddy found you! He did. Mia hugged her back, and Adrian saw some of the tension drain from her shoulders. I'm sorry I missed the car earlier. It's okay. We came to rescue you instead. Is that what this is? A rescue? Kind of, Adrian said, pulling out of the parking lot. Ellie's very into dramatic gestures. I learned from you, Ellie pointed out. Fair enough. The drive back took longer than the drive there, partly because Adrian actually followed traffic laws this time, and partly because Ellie filled every second with chatter about her presents and the tree and how the house was decorated, and did Mia like turkey because they were having turkey with all the things that go with turkey. Mia answered every question patiently, smiling in a way that looked almost painful, like she'd forgotten how, and was relearning from scratch. When they pulled through the gates of the estate, Mia went quiet. This is where you live? Unfortunately. Adrian, this is... She stared out the window as the mansion came into view, all lit up against the night sky. This is not a house. This is a castle. It's excessive, Adrian said. I know it's excessive. It's beautiful. It's empty. The words came out before he could stop them. Mia looked at him in the rearview mirror, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or recognition of shared loneliness wearing different disguises. Ellie was already unbuckled and out the door before Adrian had fully parked, running toward the house yelling for Marcus to get dinner ready. Adrian and Mia followed more slowly, and he watched her take in everything. The fountain in the circular driveway, the marble steps, the oak doors that probably cost more than her car. I feel like I should have dressed better, she said quietly. You're fine. I'm wearing jeans to a mansion. I'm wearing jeans too. Yours probably cost more than my rent. She wasn't wrong, but Adrian didn't know how to respond to that without sounding like an ass, so he just opened the door and let her walk into the foyer. Mia stopped just inside the threshold, staring up at the chandelier that Sarah had picked out 6 years ago. 20 feet of crystal and gold hanging there like a frozen waterfall. This is insane, she whispered. That's one word for it. Ellie appeared from somewhere deeper in the house, grabbing Mia's hand. Come see the tree. It's even bigger than the one at the mall. She dragged Mia toward the living room while Adrian hung back, watching them go. He heard Mia's gasp when she saw the tree, 18 feet tall, covered in ornaments that a professional decorator had arranged with mathematical precision. Ellie, this is incredible. Daddy says it's too big, but I like it big. Adrian followed them in, finding Mia standing in the middle of the room looking overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. This is all so... Much? Adrian supplied. I was going to say magical, but much works too. Ellie showed her every ornament, explaining the story behind each one, even though most of them had been bought by decorators and had no stories at all. Mia listened like each one mattered, asking questions and admiring the lights, and generally being more patient than any stranger had a right to be. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Dinner is ready, Mr. Hayes? Thanks, Marcus. We'll be right there. They moved to the dining room, where the table had been set for 3 at one end instead of spread out across the whole massive surface. Small mercy. Adrian had been half afraid Marcus would make them sit at opposite ends, shouting across 20 feet of mahogany. The food was perfect. Traditional Christmas fare that actually looked homemade instead of like it had been plated by robots. Turkey and stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, rolls that were still warm from the oven. Mia sat down carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something. This is too much. It's just dinner. Adrian, nothing about this is just dinner. She's right, Daddy, Ellie said, already loading her plate. This is fancy. Can we please just eat before it gets cold? They ate, and slowly the awkwardness faded. Ellie kept the conversation going with her endless questions, and Mia answered them all while occasionally sneaking glances around the room like she still couldn't quite believe where she was. Do you live here alone? She asked eventually. I mean, besides Ellie. There's staff, Marcus, the housekeeper, security, but yeah, it's mostly just us. It must get lonely. Adrian thought about lying, about saying the house was plenty full, and he liked his space, and he'd never been the type to need constant company. But Mia was looking at him with those honest eyes, and he found himself telling the truth instead. It does. Yeah. I'm sorry, that was probably rude to point out. It's fine. You're not wrong, Ellie piped up. Daddy works all the time, so he doesn't notice being lonely. Ellie, well, you do. Mia smiled. She's got your number. She's got everyone's number. It's terrifying. They finished dinner and moved to the sitting room, where a fire was already crackling in the fireplace. Someone, probably Marcus, had set out hot chocolate and cookies on the coffee table. Adrian sat in one of the leather chairs while Ellie dragged Mia to the couch and proceeded to show her every single Christmas present in excruciating detail. Mia examined each toy with genuine interest, asking questions about how they worked and which ones Ellie liked best. When Ellie showed her the new bike, Mia's face softened. I had a bike like this when I was your age. Red, just like yours. Did you ride it a lot? Every single day. My dad taught me in the park near our house. I must have fallen 100 times before I got it right. I'm scared of falling. That's okay. Everyone is scared at first, but you know what? The falling part isn't the important part. The important part is getting back up. Ellie thought about this seriously. Did you always get back up? Always. Even when it hurt. Adrian watched them from across the room, this woman and his daughter sitting together like they'd known each other for years instead of hours. There was something effortless about the way Mia talked to Ellie. No condescension, no baby talk, just honest conversation that respected the kid as a person. Sarah had been like that too. The thought hit him harder than expected, and he had to look away, focusing on the fire until the sudden ache in his chest subsided. Daddy, come sit with us. He moved to the couch, and somehow Ellie maneuvered it so he and Mia were sitting next to each other with her between them. They sat there watching the fire while Ellie talked about everything and nothing, slowly winding down as the sugar and excitement wore off. Eventually her words started slurring together, her head drooping against Mia's shoulder. Someone's tired, Mia said softly. I'm not tired, Ellie mumbled, clearly exhausted. Right, you're wide awake. Wide awake. 5 minutes later, she was completely asleep, her breathing slow and even. Mia looked at Adrian over Ellie's head, her expression tender. She's wonderful, she whispered. She's everything. I can tell. Adrian carefully lifted Ellie, cradling her against his chest. I should put her to bed. I'll be back in a few minutes. He carried his daughter upstairs, tucking her into bed and pulling the covers up to her chin. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about bikes and cookies, then settled back into sleep. He stood there watching her for a moment, this tiny person who'd somehow become his entire world. Then he went back downstairs, where Mia was still sitting by the fire. She looked up when he entered. Is she down? Out cold. Today wore her out. Today wore everyone out. Adrian sat back down, and for a while they just existed in the quiet, the only sound the crackling fire and the distant hum of the house settling around them. Thank you for coming, Adrian said finally. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for tracking me down at the hospital. That was above and beyond. Ellie wouldn't let me cancel. Still, you didn't have to do any of this. Adrian looked at her, at the way the firelight caught in her hair, at the exhaustion that never quite left her face. When Sarah was sick, people did things for us. Brought food, watched Ellie, just showed up. At the time I hated it, hated feeling like a charity case, but now I understand they weren't doing it because they pitied me. They were doing it because sometimes people need help, and it's okay to accept it. Mia was quiet for a moment. Is that what this is? Help? Maybe. Or maybe it's just dinner with someone who gets it. Gets what? What it's like to be tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. She looked down at her hands. I'm very tired of that. Yeah, me too. They sat there longer, talking in fits and starts about nothing important. Mia told him about her mom before she got sick, about the art projects she'd abandoned, about the life she'd thought she'd have before everything fell apart. Adrian found himself sharing things he never talked about. How he sometimes forgot what Sarah looked like until he saw her in Ellie's face. How building the company had been easier than learning to live without her. How success felt meaningless when there was nobody to share it with. I keep thinking I should feel grateful, he admitted. I have money, a healthy daughter, opportunities most people would kill for. But mostly I just feel numb. Grief is weird like that, Mia said. It doesn't care what you have or don't have. It just sits there taking up space. How do you deal with it? With your mom? I don't. Not really. I just wake up every day and try to get through it without falling apart completely. She smiled sadly. Some days I'm more successful than others. Today? Today was good. This was good. I needed this more than you know. Adrian checked his watch and realized it was almost 9. I should get you back to the hospital. Probably. Neither of them moved. Finally, Mia stood, smoothing down her jeans. I don't want to overstay my welcome. You're not. Still, you've already done so much. Adrian drove her back through the quiet Christmas streets, the city looking almost peaceful under its blanket of lights and snow. They didn't talk much during the drive, but it was comfortable silence, the kind you could share with someone without feeling like you needed to fill every second with words. When they pulled into the hospital parking lot, Mia turned to him. Thank you for everything. For finding me, for dinner, for letting me be part of your Christmas. You made it better. I don't know about that. I do. Ellie hasn't smiled that much in months. She's a special kid, Adrian. Don't forget that. I won't. Mia reached for the door handle, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really invite me last night at the mall? What made you say yes when Ellie asked? Adrian thought about that, about the real answer beneath the polite excuses. Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who was exactly as lost as I am, and I thought maybe we could be lost together for a while, that it might hurt less. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Does it hurt less? I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow. She smiled, wiping her eyes. Okay, I will. Wait. Adrian pulled out his phone. Give me your number in case you forget again. I won't forget. Give it to me anyway. She rattled off her number and he saved it, then sent her a text so she'd have his. There. Now, you have no excuse. For what? For not calling if you need something, or if you just need to talk, or if Ellie wants to say hi. Adrian, I'm serious. You don't have to do this alone. Mia looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. You don't either, you know. Have to do it alone. I know. She got out of the car, then leaned back in through the window. Merry Christmas, Adrian. Merry Christmas, Mia. He watched her walk into the hospital, waiting until she'd disappeared through the doors before pulling away. On the drive home, his phone buzzed with a text. It was from Mia. Thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me. M. Adrian pulled over, staring at the message. Then he typed back, Thank you for letting me. When he got home, the house felt different somehow. Still enormous, still expensive, still too big for 2 people, but not quite as empty as it had been that morning. He checked on Ellie, who was still sound asleep, then went to his own room and lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about a woman crying in a mall and a 5-year-old girl who'd decided they all needed each other. Maybe she was right. Maybe they did. The phone call came 3 days later at 2 in the morning. Adrian jerked awake to the sound of his ringtone cutting through the darkness, his heart already racing before he was fully conscious. Late-night calls never brought good news. He grabbed the phone off his nightstand, squinting at the screen. Mia. Hello? Adrian. Her voice was shaking so badly he could barely understand her. I'm sorry. I know it's late. I shouldn't have called. I didn't know who else. Mia, slow down. What's wrong? She's gone. The words came out as a sob. My mom. She died an hour ago, and I'm sitting here in this hospital room, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Adrian was already out of bed, pulling on clothes with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. Which hospital? What? Which hospital are you at? St. Catherine's. But, Adrian, you don't have to. I'm coming. Don't move. He hung up before she could argue, checked on Ellie, who was fast asleep, then called his housekeeper's emergency line. Mrs. Chen answered on the third ring, sounding groggy but alert. Mr. Hayes, is everything all right? I need you to come stay with Ellie, right now. I have to go out. Of course, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Make it 10. She made it in 8. Adrian met her at the door, gave her the quickest briefing of his life, and was in his car before she could ask questions. The roads were empty at this hour, just streetlights and the occasional taxi carrying people home from bars or night shifts. He made it to the hospital in 18 minutes. The emergency entrance was quiet, just a few people scattered in the waiting room looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Adrian went straight to the information desk, where a different woman than last time looked up with tired eyes. I'm here for Mia Carter. Her mother just passed. Room 427. The woman's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. 4th floor, take the elevator to your right. Adrian found Mia exactly where she'd said she'd be, sitting in a chair beside an empty hospital bed, staring at nothing. She looked smaller than she had 3 days ago, like grief had physically compressed her into something more fragile. Hey, he said quietly from the doorway. She looked up, and her face crumpled. You came. Of course I came. He crossed the room and pulled her into a hug, and she broke completely, sobbing into his chest while he held her and tried to remember what people had done for him when Sarah died. What had helped? What had made it worse? Mostly, he just held on and let her cry. I'm sorry, she kept saying between sobs. I'm so sorry. For what? For calling you. For dragging you out here in the middle of the night. For falling apart like this. Stop apologizing. I knew it was coming. The doctors told me it was coming, but I thought I'd have more time. I thought I'd get to say goodbye properly, and instead I was in the cafeteria getting terrible coffee, and when I came back, she was just gone. Her voice broke on the last word. Adrian guided her back to the chair and sat down next to her, still holding her hand. The room smelled like antiseptic and something floral, probably from the vase of wilting flowers on the windowsill. Someone had already stripped the bed and removed the medical equipment, leaving the space looking sterile and temporary. Tell me about her, Adrian said. Tell me about your mom. Mia wiped her eyes, looking surprised. What? You said you wanted to say goodbye properly, so say it now. Tell me who she was. For a moment, Mia just stared at him. Then she started talking. Slowly at first, then faster, the words spilling out like water from a broken dam. She told him about her mother teaching her to paint when she was 6, about camping trips and birthday parties, and the time they drove across the country in a beat-up sedan that broke down in 3 different states. She told him about her mother's terrible singing voice and her incredible pot roast, and the way she'd always believed Mia could do anything she set her mind to. She never gave up on me, Mia said. Even when I gave up on myself. Even when I dropped out of school and came home to take care of her. She kept saying I was going to do great things someday, that this was just a detour. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. She really was. Mia looked down at their joined hands, and now she's gone, and I don't know how to be in a world without her. Adrian understood that feeling better than he wanted to. You just do. One day at a time. 1 hour at a time if that's all you can manage. Does it get easier? He thought about lying, about giving her false hope, but Mia deserved honesty. It gets different. The sharp edges dull a little. You learn to carry it, but easier? He shook his head. I don't think it ever gets easy. They sat there in that empty hospital room while the night slowly bled into early morning. Nurses came and went, offering condolences and paperwork that needed signing. Mia handled it all mechanically, her hands shaking as she wrote her name on forms she barely read. Around 4:30, a woman in a dark suit arrived and introduced herself as the hospital's bereavement coordinator. She spoke in that careful, practiced tone people used when dealing with death, explaining options for funeral homes and cremation and things that seemed impossible to think about when the grief was still this raw. Adrian watched Mia's face go blank, watched her nod along like she understood when clearly she didn't understand anything except that her mother was dead and nothing else mattered. Can we do this later? He asked, interrupting the coordinator mid-sentence. The woman looked startled. I'm sorry? The funeral arrangements, can they wait a few hours? Ms. Carter just lost her mother and she needs time to process before making decisions about caskets and services. Of course, I understand, but there are time-sensitive matters which can wait until morning, actual morning, like 9 o'clock. The coordinator glanced at Mia, who was staring at the floor, then back at Adrian. Yes, of course. I'll call Ms. Carter later today. After she left, Mia turned to Adrian. Thank you. She was just doing her job. I know, but I couldn't think. Couldn't process what she was saying. It all just sounded like noise. That's normal? How do you know? Because I've been where you are. Adrian stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, you're not staying here. I should stay. I should. You should get out of this room. Get some air. Get some food that isn't from a vending machine. I'm not hungry. You're going to eat anyway. He drove her to an all-night diner on the edge of downtown, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lights that hummed too loudly. At 5 in the morning, it was mostly empty except for a few truck drivers and people coming off night shifts. They slid into a corner booth and a waitress appeared with coffee before they'd even looked at the menu. Rough night? She asked, taking in their exhausted faces. Something like that, Adrian said. Well, coffee's fresh. Food will be out quick. Just wave when you're ready. She left them alone and Mia wrapped her hands around the coffee mug like it was the only solid thing in the universe. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, she said quietly. Everything for the last 2 years has been about taking care of her. Doctors' appointments and medications and insurance claims and just keeping her alive. And now there's nothing, just this huge empty space where all that used to be. Adrian didn't have a good answer for that, so he just listened. I keep thinking about all the things I should have said, should have done. I spent so much time being tired and frustrated and angry that she was sick and not enough time just being grateful I still had her. Mia's voice cracked. What kind of daughter does that make me? A human one. That's not good enough. It has to be. It's all any of us are. The waitress returned and Adrian ordered for both of them. Eggs and toast and bacon, comfort food that probably wouldn't stay down but at least gave them something to do with their hands. When the food arrived, Mia picked at it half-heartedly while Adrian ate mechanically, both of them going through motions because the alternative was sitting still with the grief. What happens now? Mia asked eventually. With the funeral and everything? You make decisions when you're ready. Pick a funeral home, plan a service if you want one, figure out what comes next. I can't afford a funeral. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Adrian looked up from his eggs. What? I can't afford it. The medical bills wiped out everything. I've been living on credit cards and hope for the last 6 months. She laughed bitterly. My mother's going to die without even a proper funeral because I'm broke and useless. You're not useless. I'm sitting in a diner at 5 in the morning having a breakdown because I can't even bury my own mother. That feels pretty useless. Adrian set down his fork. Let me help. No. Mia. No. You've already done too much. I can't take your money. It's not about money. It's exactly about money. You have it, I don't, and accepting it would make me feel like charity, like I can't handle my own life. You're handling more than most people could survive. That doesn't mean I want handouts. They stared at each other across the table, and Adrian recognized the pride in her eyes because he'd felt it himself after Sarah died. Everyone had wanted to help, to throw money at his problems, to fix things that couldn't be fixed. He'd hated it then, understood why she hated it now. Okay, he said. No handouts. But let me help you figure out options. Payment plans, affordable services, whatever. You don't have to do this alone. Mia's shoulders sagged. I don't know how to accept help. Neither do I, but I'm learning. They finished eating as the sun started to rise, painting the sky outside the diner windows in shades of pink and gold. Normal people were waking up to start normal days, completely unaware that Mia's entire world had just collapsed. Adrian paid the check and drove her back to her apartment, a 5th-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's cooking from last night. You want me to come up? Adrian asked. No, I just need to sleep. Try to sleep anyway. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. Mia nodded, already pulling away. Thank you for coming, for everything. That's what friends do. She looked at him surprised. Is that what we are? Friends? I think so. Unless you know another word for people who show up at hospitals at 2 in the morning. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Friends works. Adrian watched her climb the stairs, waited until she disappeared into her apartment, then sat in his car for a long moment before driving home. Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen making breakfast when he walked in, and Ellie was already at the table drawing pictures with the new markers Santa had brought. Daddy! She jumped down and ran to hug him. Where did you go? I had to help a friend. What friend? Mia. Remember her? Ellie's face lit up. Is she coming over again? Not today, sweetheart. She's having a hard time right now. What kind of hard time? Adrian glanced at Mrs. Chen, who was tactfully pretending to be very focused on scrambling eggs. Her mom died last night. Ellie's expression went serious. Like how Mommy died? Yeah, like that. That's really sad. It is. We should make her feel better. I don't think we can make it better, Ellie. Some things are just sad, and we have to let them be sad. But Ellie was already pulling out construction paper and more markers, settling back into her chair with determination. I'm making her a card with rainbows. Rainbows make everything a little bit better. Adrian watched his daughter work, her tongue poking out in concentration as she drew careful rainbow arcs across the page, and felt something loosen in his chest. Maybe rainbows didn't fix grief, but the gesture, the wanting to help even when you couldn't, that mattered. He went upstairs to shower and change, then made calls to his office, canceling his meetings for the day. His assistant sounded shocked. Adrian never canceled meetings, but didn't argue when he said it was important. Around noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Funeral home wants payment up front. I'm looking at cremation because it's cheaper. This is awful. Adrian stared at the message, then called his accountant. Richard, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions about it. This sounds ominous. I'm going to give you information for a funeral home. I want you to pay their invoice, but I want it set up so it looks like it's coming from a memorial fund or charitable organization, not from me directly. Adrian? I said no questions. Richard sighed. How much are we talking? Whatever they charge, full service, whatever she wants. You're a good person, you know that? I'm really not. I'm just someone who has money and knows what it's like to bury someone you love. He gave Richard the details, then texted Mia. Call the funeral home back. Ask about memorial assistance programs. They should have options. Her response came 15 minutes later. They said there's a fund that covers most of it. Adrian, did you? Don't ask questions. Just let them help you. You're impossible. So I've been told. Over the next 3 days, Adrian found himself pulled deeper into Mia's orbit. She called with questions about paperwork, about death certificates and estate lawyers and all the bureaucratic nightmares that came with losing someone. He helped where he could, made calls when she couldn't face making them herself, and showed up with coffee when she sounded like she was about to break. Ellie made 17 different cards, each one featuring rainbows and messages in wobbly handwriting that said things like, "Sorry your mom died," and "Hope you feel better soon," with the brutal honesty only kids could manage. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday at a small chapel on the west side. Adrian offered to go with her, and to his surprise, Mia accepted. I don't have anyone else, she admitted when he asked if she was sure. Mom's friends are mostly dead or too sick to travel, and I burned through my own friends when I dropped out of school. You and Ellie are basically it. Then we'll be there. Saturday arrived cold and gray, the kind of January day that felt designed for mourning. Adrian dressed Ellie in her nicest dress and tried to explain what funerals were for, how they were a way to say goodbye and celebrate someone's life. Will Mia cry? Ellie asked in the car. Probably. Can I hug her if she does? That would be very kind. They arrived at the chapel 10 minutes early. It was smaller than Adrian expected, with worn wooden pews and stained glass windows that had probably been beautiful once. Mia was already there, standing near the front wearing a simple black dress that hung a little loose, like she'd lost weight. She turned when they entered, and Adrian saw her face transform when she spotted Ellie. You came. We told you we would, Adrian said. Ellie ran forward and wrapped her arms around Mia's waist, and Adrian watched Mia close her eyes and hold on like his daughter was the only thing keeping her upright. The service was small, maybe a dozen people total, mostly elderly women who introduced themselves as friends of Mia's mother from the old neighborhood. The pastor gave a brief sermon. Mia spoke for 5 minutes about her mother's life, and then it was over. Afterward, people filed past offering condolences that all sounded the same. Mia accepted them graciously, her face a careful mask of composure that Adrian recognized from his own experience. You learn to wear that mask, learn to say thank you, and I appreciate it, and yes, she'll be missed, even when you wanted to scream that words didn't help, that nothing helped, that everyone should just leave you alone with your grief. When the last person left, Mia's mask cracked. I need some air. Adrian nodded to Mrs. Chen, who'd come along to watch Ellie, and followed Mia outside. She walked to the edge of the parking lot and stood there staring at nothing, her arms wrapped around herself. You did good in there, Adrian said. I barely held it together. That counts as doing good. She turned to look at him, and he saw tears tracking down her face. I keep waiting for it to feel real. Like my brain knows she's gone, but the rest of me hasn't caught up yet. Give it time. How much time did it take you? With Sarah? Adrian thought about that. I'm still waiting. Mia laughed, but it came out more like a sob. That's not encouraging. No, but it's honest. They stood there in the cold while people slowly left the chapel and drove away, until it was just them and the gray sky and the weight of everything they'd both lost. What do I do now? Mia asked quietly. I've spent 2 years living for someone else, and now there's just nothing. No purpose, no direction, just me in an empty apartment trying to figure out what comes next. You start over. I don't know how. Neither did I. But you do it anyway, because the alternative is giving up, and you're not the giving up type. How do you know? Because if you were, you would have given up a long time ago. Ellie appeared then, running across the parking lot with something clutched in her hand. She skidded to a stop in front of Mia and held it out. I made you something. It was a snow globe, clearly handmade, a small glass jar filled with water and glitter, with a tiny paper rainbow glued to the inside. When you shake it, the glitter falls like snow, Ellie explained, and the rainbow is always there, even in the snow, because rainbows don't go away just because things are sad. Mia took the snow globe with shaking hands, and when she looked at Ellie, fresh tears were streaming down her face. Thank you, sweetheart. This is perfect. Do you like it? I love it. I'm going to keep it forever. Ellie beamed, then hugged Mia again before running back to where Mrs. Chen was waiting by the car. Mia shook the snow globe, watching glitter swirl around the rainbow. She's an amazing kid. She gets that from her mother. I think she gets some of it from you too. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just stood there while Mia carefully tucked the snow globe into her purse like it was made of something precious. Come back to the house, he said suddenly. Have dinner with us. You shouldn't be alone tonight. Adrian, please. Ellie would love it, and honestly, I would too. Mia studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found there made her nod. Okay, just for a little while. A little while turned into the whole evening. They ordered pizza because nobody felt like formal food, and sat around the kitchen table while Ellie told elaborate stories about her stuffed animals and their various adventures. Mia listened with the kind of attention that made Ellie glow, asking questions and laughing in the right places. After Ellie went to bed, Adrian and Mia ended up back by the fireplace with wine. Neither of them was really drinking. I should go, Mia said for the third time, not moving. You keep saying that. I know, but I don't actually want to go back to that empty apartment. Then don't. I can't just live here, Adrian. Why not? She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Because that's insane. Because we barely know each other. Because I'm not a charity case you need to rescue. What if I'm not trying to rescue you? What if I'm just tired of this house feeling like a mausoleum? That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's true. Adrian set down his wine glass. I've spent 3 years telling myself I'm fine alone, that Ellie and I don't need anyone else. But the truth is I'm lonely, and she's lonely, and you walked into our lives, and suddenly the house doesn't feel quite so empty. Mia was quiet for a long moment. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you want a job. What? My company needs a graphic designer. Actually, we've needed one for 6 months, but I kept putting off hiring someone because I hate dealing with HR. You're talented, you need work, and I need someone who can make our marketing materials look less like they were designed by robots. You've never seen my work. Show me. Mia pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos of designs she'd made in school, logos and posters and website mock-ups that even Adrian could tell were good. Really good. When can you start? He asked. Adrian, this is crazy. That's not an answer. I don't know. Monday? If you're serious? I'm serious. Salary, benefits, the whole thing. But you have to actually work. I'm not just handing you money. I wouldn't accept it if you were. I know. That's why I'm offering. Mia looked at him, and Adrian saw something shift in her expression. Hope, maybe, or the first stirrings of belief that life might continue after all. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll start Monday. Good. They sat there longer, talking about nothing and everything, until Mia finally stood to leave around midnight. Adrian walked her to the door where she paused with her hand on the handle. Thank you, she said, for today, for the job, for everything. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I'm going to anyway. She left, and Adrian watched her taillights disappear down the driveway, then stood there in his enormous empty foyer trying to figure out what he'd just done. He'd hired a woman he barely knew, invited her deeper into his life, given Ellie someone to get attached to who might leave and break her heart. It was reckless and impulsive and probably a terrible idea. But standing there alone in the silence, Adrian realized he didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, he'd done something that felt right instead of safe. And maybe that was exactly what he needed. Mia showed up for her first day of work wearing a blazer Adrian suspected she'd borrowed and carrying a portfolio case that had definitely seen better years. She looked terrified. I'm early, she said when Adrian opened the door at 7:45. I know I'm early. I couldn't sleep and I didn't want to be late on my first day, so I just drove over and now I'm standing here like a complete idiot. Breathe, Adrian said. You're fine. Come in. She followed him through the house to his home office, a space he rarely used because most days he went to the actual office downtown. But he decided to work from home today, partly to make Mia's transition easier, and partly because the idea of throwing her into a corporate environment on day one felt cruel. This is where you'll work when you're here, he said, gesturing to the desk he'd had moved in yesterday. Computer's set up, you've got access to our shared drives, and I put together a folder of current projects that need attention. Mia set down her portfolio and looked around the room like she still couldn't quite believe this was happening. This is nicer than anywhere I've ever worked. The bar was probably pretty low. You have no idea. Adrian showed her the systems, walked her through the company's branding guidelines, and tried not to notice how she took notes on everything like she was afraid of forgetting a single detail. Around 9, Ellie wandered in still wearing her pajamas. Mia! She launched herself across the room for a hug. You're here! I work here now, remember? I know, but I didn't think you'd be here, like in our house. Is that okay? Ellie looked at her father. Daddy, can Mia stay for breakfast? Mia's working, sweetheart. But everyone has to eat breakfast. That's a rule. Adrian caught Mia's eye and saw her trying not to smile. I guess that is a rule. They ended up in the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen was already making pancakes because apparently word had spread that they had a guest. Ellie sat next to Mia and talked nonstop about her school project while Mia listened and asked questions and somehow made a 5-year-old feel like the most interesting person in the world. Adrian watched them from across the table and felt something dangerous taking root in his chest, the beginning of hope that this might actually work. After breakfast, Mia returned to the office and dove into work with an intensity that surprised him. She pulled up the marketing materials he'd flagged as needing redesign and immediately started making notes, her face cycling through expressions that ranged from concentration to barely concealed horror. These are really bad, she said finally, not looking up from her screen. I know. No, I mean really bad, like whoever designed these actively hated your company. It was an algorithm. She looked at him. You're joking. I wish I was. Our last designer quit and we needed something fast, so IT set up some automated system that pulled stock images and templates. Adrian, this is a billion-dollar company. You can't have marketing materials that look like they were made by a robot having a nervous breakdown. He couldn't help but laugh. That's exactly what they look like. Give me 2 weeks. I can fix this. Take 3. I don't want you burning out on week 1. She was already sketching, her hand moving across her tablet, while she muttered to herself about color theory and visual hierarchy. Adrian left her to it and went to deal with his own work, but he found himself distracted, listening to the sound of her working in the next room. It felt strange having someone else in the house during the day. Strange, but not bad. Around noon, his phone rang. His head of operations demanding to know why Adrian wasn't in the office and whether everything was okay because Adrian never worked from home. I'm mentoring our new designer, Adrian said, which was technically true. We have a new designer? As of today. Does HR know about this? They will once you tell them. He hung up before Tom could ask more questions, then went to check on Mia. She was still working, so focused she didn't notice him standing in the doorway. You need to eat, he said. She jumped, nearly dropping her stylus. What time is it? 12:30. Already? She looked at her screen like it had personally betrayed her. I got caught up. I noticed. Come on, lunch break is mandatory. Says who? Says me. I'm the boss. She rolled her eyes but saved her work and followed him to the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen had left sandwiches and fruit. They ate standing at the counter, and Adrian found himself asking about her process, about how she decided what worked and what didn't. Mia's face lit up as she explained, and he realized this was what passion looked like. This unguarded enthusiasm for something that most people would consider just a job. Sorry, she said eventually, catching herself mid-ramble. I'm probably boring you. You're not. I tend to get carried away when I talk about design. Good. That means you actually care about what you're doing. She looked at him for a moment, something shifting in her expression. Thank you for this. For giving me a chance when you had no reason to trust that I wouldn't screw it up. You're not going to screw it up. You don't know that. Yes, I do. They stood there in the kitchen, the moment stretching longer than it should have, until Ellie came barreling in demanding to know if Mia could stay for dinner too. Ellie, Mia has her own home. She can't just live here. Why not? We have lots of rooms. That's not how jobs work. It should be. Mia laughed, and Adrian realized it was the first time he'd heard her laugh without sadness underneath it. The sound did something to his chest that he wasn't ready to examine too closely. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm Adrian hadn't anticipated. Mia would arrive in the morning, work in the office, have lunch with him and Ellie when she was home, then leave around 5. Some days she stayed for dinner, some days she helped Ellie with homework. Some days Adrian looked up from his computer and found them playing in the living room. Mia on the floor having a tea party with stuffed animals, while his daughter gave orders like a tiny CEO. The marketing materials she produced were exceptional, so good that Adrian's team started asking questions about where he'd found this designer and whether she was available for other projects. She's busy, Adrian told them, which was true but also possessive in a way he didn't want to analyze. On a Thursday in late February, Adrian came home from an actual office day to find Mia and Ellie in the kitchen baking cookies. Well, Ellie was baking. Mia was mostly preventing kitchen fires. We're making snickerdoodles, Ellie announced, covered head to toe in flour. I can see that. Mia's never made cookies before. Can you believe that? Adrian looked at Mia, who shrugged sheepishly. My mom wasn't really the baking type. We were more of a order pizza household. So Ellie's teaching you? Apparently. He watched them work together, Ellie bossing Mia around while Mia followed instructions with exaggerated seriousness, and felt that dangerous hope growing stronger. After Ellie went to bed, he found Mia cleaning up the kitchen. You don't have to do that, he said. Mrs. Chen will handle it tomorrow. I made the mess. Well, Ellie made the mess, but I supervise, so I'm partially responsible. Adrian grabbed a dish towel and started drying while she washed. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that only happened when people had gotten used to each other's presence. Can I ask you something? Mia said eventually. Sure. Why did you really give me this job? Adrian thought about lying, about giving her the professional answer about her talent and the company's needs. But they'd been honest with each other from the start, and he didn't want to stop now. Because I liked having you around, he said, and I wanted a reason for you to keep coming back. She stopped washing, her hands still in the soapy water. Adrian, I'm not saying that to make you uncomfortable. I'm tired of pretending everything's professional and distant when it stopped being that a long time ago. When did it stop? Probably when you showed up at Christmas and my daughter decided you were family. Mia pulled her hands from the water, drying them on a towel. And what do you think I am? It was the question Adrian had been avoiding for weeks, the one he couldn't answer without admitting things he wasn't sure he was ready to admit. I think you're someone who makes this house feel less empty, he said carefully. I think Ellie lights up when you're around, and I think I'm terrified of what that means. Why terrified? Because the last time I let myself care about someone, I lost her, and I don't know if I can survive that again. Mia set down the towel and turned to face him fully. Sarah. Yeah. I'm not her, Adrian. I know that. Do you? Because sometimes I get the feeling you're waiting for me to disappear too, like you're bracing for impact that might never come. He wanted to deny it, but she wasn't wrong. Part of him was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Mia to wake up one day and realize she didn't need this job or this house or the complicated single father who came with it. I don't know how to not be afraid, he admitted. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. She reached out and took his hand, and Adrian looked down at their joined fingers and thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways letting her in could end in more loss, more grief, more nights sitting alone in an empty house wondering what he'd done to deserve this much pain. But he also thought about Ellie's laughter and the way the house felt warmer with Mia in it, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, life was offering him a second chance. I'm not good at this, he said, at letting people in. I noticed. And I come with a lot of baggage. So do I. And Ellie has to come first, always. I wouldn't want it any other way. Adrian studied her face, searching for any sign that she didn't understand what she was signing up for. But all he saw was honesty and patience and something that looked a lot like hope. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay, let's figure it out together. Mia smiled and it transformed her entire face. Yeah? Yeah. She squeezed his hand, and they stood there in the kitchen with dish soap drying on the counter and cookies cooling on a rack, and Adrian thought that maybe this was what healing looked like. Not some grand dramatic moment, but small quiet ones. Hand-holding in kitchens, shared cookies, the gradual realization that life could be good again if you let it. The next morning, Adrian woke up to his phone ringing at 6 a.m. He answered groggily, expecting a work emergency. Instead, he got his mother. Adrian Michael Hayes, why did I have to hear from Margaret Chen that you've been seeing someone? He sat up, suddenly wide awake. What? Don't what me. Margaret says there's a woman spending time at the house with Ellie, and you didn't think to mention this? Mom, it's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've been hiding something. Adrian rubbed his face, trying to figure out how to explain Mia without making it sound exactly like what it was becoming. She works for me. She's our new graphic designer. Graphic designers don't usually have dinner with their boss's children. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it for me. He gave her the abbreviated version. Meeting Mia at Christmas, her mother dying, the job offer. He left out the parts about how he felt when she smiled and how Ellie had started calling her our Mia when she thought he wasn't listening. His mother was quiet for a long moment. You like her? Mom? Adrian? I'm 73 years old. I've earned the right to be direct. You like this woman? Maybe. There's no maybe about it. I can hear it in your voice. It's too soon. Says who? Says common sense. Says the fact that Sarah's only been gone 3 years. Sarah would want you to be happy. The words hit harder than they should have. Adrian stared at the ceiling, feeling his throat tighten. You don't know that, he managed. Yes, I do. She told me so. When she was sick, when she knew she wasn't going to make it, she made me promise to make sure you didn't spend the rest of your life alone. Adrian had to stop talking because if he didn't, he was going to start crying, and he hadn't cried about Sarah in over a year. Adrian, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. So this woman, Mia, is she good to Ellie? She's wonderful with her. And she makes you happy? I think so, yeah. Then stop overthinking it. Life's too short to waste time being scared of good things. After he hung up, Adrian lay there staring at the ceiling for another 20 minutes, thinking about Sarah and Mia and the strange way life had of offering second chances when you least expected them. When he finally went downstairs, he found Ellie already dressed and eating cereal at the kitchen table. "Is Mia coming today?" she asked around a mouthful of Cheerios. "It's Saturday, sweetheart. Mia doesn't work on weekends." "Can we invite her over anyway? Ellie, please? We could go to the park. She's never seen the park and it's supposed to be sunny and we could feed the ducks." Adrian looked at his daughter's hopeful face and thought about his mother's words. Stop overthinking it. "Okay, I'll call her." Ellie cheered and spilled milk everywhere in her excitement. Mia answered on the third ring, sounding like she'd just woken up. "Hello?" "Hey, it's Adrian. Did I wake you?" "No, maybe. What time is it?" 8:30. Ellie wants to know if you want to go to the park with us today." There was a pause. "Really? Really? No pressure if you have other plans?" "I don't. I mean, I was just going to do laundry and feel sorry for myself, but the park sounds better." "Great. We'll pick you up in an hour?" "I'll be ready." She was waiting outside her building when they arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater Adrian had never seen before. She looked nervous. "This is okay, right?" she asked as she climbed into the car. "That I'm coming? I don't want to intrude on your family time." "You're not intruding," Ellie said from the back seat. "You're part of the family time." Mia caught Adrian's eye, and he saw the question there. He just smiled and pulled away from the curb. The park was crowded with weekend families, kids running and dogs chasing frisbees, and couples walking hand in hand. They found a spot near the duck pond, and Ellie immediately took off toward the water, bread bag in hand. "She's going to fall in," Adrian predicted. "Probably," Mia agreed. "Should we stop her?" "Nah, she needs to learn consequences." They sat on a bench watching Ellie throw bread chunks at ducks who were absolutely not interested in her offerings. "This is nice," Mia said. "I can't remember the last time I went to a park just to go to a park." It's Ellie's favorite place. Well, besides the toy store, and the ice cream shop, and the library. Actually, she has a lot of favorite places. Mia laughed. She's allowed to love things. Must be nice. "You don't love things?" Adrian thought about that. "I used to. Before Sarah died, I loved a lot of things. Then after, it felt safer to just not. If you don't love things, you can't lose them. That's a really sad way to live." "Yeah, it is." They sat in silence for a while, watching Ellie chase ducks who were far too smart to be caught. "I'm starting to love things again," Adrian said quietly. "It's terrifying." "What kind of things?" He looked at her. "You." Ellie laughing. "Sunday mornings, the way the house smells when you and Ellie are baking cookies, small stuff that didn't used to matter." Mia's eyes were bright. "That's not small stuff." "No, I guess it's not." Ellie came running back, soaking wet and triumphant. "I touched a duck!" "You're supposed to feed them, not touch them," Adrian said. "But I touched one. It was soft." Mia was trying not to laugh. "Did the duck enjoy being touched?" "Probably not. It flew away really fast." They spent the rest of the afternoon at the park, then got ice cream despite it being February and freezing. Ellie got chocolate all over her face, and Mia helped clean her up with napkins that immediately disintegrated. On the drive home, Ellie fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from duck chasing and sugar. Adrian glanced at Mia in the passenger seat. "Thank you for coming today." "Thank you for inviting me. Ellie really likes having you around." "Just Ellie?" Adrian smiled. "No, not just Ellie." They pulled up to Mia's building, but neither of them moved to get out. They just sat there while the engine idled and Ellie snored softly in the back. "Adrian," Mia said finally, "what are we doing?" "What do you mean?" "This. Us. Whatever this is. I need to know what I am to you because I can't keep pretending it's just a job when it stopped being that weeks ago." He'd known this conversation was coming, had been dreading and anticipating it in equal measure. "You're someone I care about," he said carefully. "Someone I want in my life. In Ellie's life." "As what? A friend? An employee? Something else?" "I don't know yet. Is that okay?" Mia studied his face, and he could see her weighing whether that answer was enough. Finally, she nodded. "Yeah, that's okay. As long as you're figuring it out and not just stringing me along. I'm figuring it out, I promise. She leaned over and kissed his cheek, quick and soft. Good, because I'm figuring it out too. Then she was out of the car and heading into her building, leaving Adrian sitting there with his heart racing and the ghost of her lips still warm on his skin. In the back seat, Ellie's eyes cracked open. Did Mia kiss you? You're supposed to be asleep. Did she? On the cheek, it doesn't count. It totally counts, Ellie grinned. You like her. Go back to sleep, Ellie. You like her and she likes you, and soon you're going to get married and she'll be my new mom. That's not how any of this works. That's exactly how it works. I saw it in a movie. Adrian looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, this 5-year-old who somehow understood more about life than he did, and felt something loosen in his chest. Would you be okay with that? He asked. If Mia became part of our family for real? Ellie's face got serious. Would it mean Mommy's really gone? The question gutted him. Mommy's already gone, sweetheart, but she'll always be your mom. Nothing changes that. But if Mia's here, it's like saying we don't need Mommy anymore. Adrian pulled over, unable to have this conversation while driving. He turned around to face Ellie fully. Listen to me. We will always need Mommy. Always. She's part of us, part of who we are. But that doesn't mean we can't love other people too. Our hearts are big enough for both. You promise? I promise. Ellie thought about this, her face scrunched in concentration. Okay, then I think Mia should be part of our family. She makes you smile again. Adrian felt his eyes burn. Yeah, she does. And she's really good at making cookies. That too. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, and Adrian thought about hearts being big enough for multiple loves, about second chances and 5-year-olds who understood things adults spent years trying to figure out. When they got home, he carried Ellie inside and tucked her into bed, then stood in the hallway outside her room trying to process everything that had happened in one day. His phone buzzed, a text from Mia. Thanks for today. I had fun. He typed back, Me too, same time next weekend? It's a date. Adrian stared at those 3 words. It's a date. And felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. He felt ready. 3 months later, Adrian was standing in his kitchen at 6 in the morning, having what could only be described as a panic attack. You're overthinking this, Mia said from where she sat at the counter, watching him pace. I'm not overthinking. I'm appropriately thinking. You've changed your shirt 4 times. Because I can't figure out what says responsible father, but also not trying too hard. Mia smiled, and even in his panicked state, Adrian registered how much more she smiled now than she had 6 months ago, how the shadows under her eyes had faded, how she'd started leaving extra clothes at his house without either of them officially acknowledging what that meant. Adrian, it's just dinner with your mother. You've had dinner with her before. Not with you there. This is different. Because I'm the woman you're dating? He stopped pacing. They hadn't actually defined what they were doing, had been dancing around labels for weeks while basically acting like a couple in every way that mattered. Hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that both thrilled and terrified him. Yeah, he said, because of that. Your mom already knows about me. You said she was happy you were seeing someone. Happy I'm not alone anymore. That's different from happy about specifics. Adrian ran his hand through his hair, making it stick up in ways that definitely didn't say responsible father. What if she thinks this is too fast? What if she thinks I'm replacing Sarah? Mia got up and crossed the kitchen, taking his hands in hers. Stop. Your mom is going to love me because I make you happy and I'm good to Ellie. And if she doesn't, we'll deal with it. Together. The word together settled something in Adrian's chest. He pulled Mia closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. When did you become the calm one in this relationship? Someone has to be, and you're clearly falling apart over a dinner party. It's not just a dinner party. It's a statement. It's saying this is real and permanent and what? Scary? Terrifying. She pulled back to look at him. You know what's scarier? Spending the rest of your life afraid to be happy because something might go wrong. I did that for 2 years after my mom got sick. I stopped living because I was too scared of losing what little I had left. And you know what? I lost it anyway. All that fear didn't protect me from anything. Adrian knew she was right. Had known it for months, but kept pushing the knowledge away because acknowledging it meant taking risks he wasn't sure he was ready for. What if I screw this up? He asked quietly. Then we fix it. That's what people do. What if I can't give you what you need? Adrian? She cupped his face in her hands, making him look at her. You already give me what I need. A place to belong, a reason to get up in the morning that isn't just surviving. Ellie's laugh, your terrible cooking, these quiet moments before the rest of the world wakes up, that's everything. He kissed her then, soft and slow, trying to pour 3 months of unspoken feelings into the gesture. When they pulled apart, Mia was smiling. Go change your shirt one more time if it makes you feel better, but make it quick. Your mom will be here in an hour and Ellie's still asleep. Adrian did change his shirt, settling on a simple blue button-down that Sarah had always said made his eyes look good. The thought of Sarah didn't hurt quite as much as it used to. The grief was still there, would probably always be there, but it had softened into something he could carry without it crushing him. He wondered if Sarah would have liked Mia. Thought she probably would have. They were different in 1,000 ways, but they shared the same kindness, the same ability to see through his walls to the scared person underneath. Ellie woke up at 7, immediately demanding to know if Grandma was coming, and could they make the special cookies, and did Mia know that Grandma gave the best hugs in the entire universe? I didn't know that, Mia said, helping Ellie into her favorite dress. But now I'm excited to meet her. She's gonna love you, Ellie said, with the absolute certainty only children possessed. Everyone loves you. Not everyone. Everyone who matters. Adrian watched them from the doorway, his daughter and this woman who'd somehow become essential to their lives, and felt that dangerous hope bloom into something bigger. Something that felt a lot like love. His mother arrived at exactly 8 o'clock because punctuality was apparently genetic. She swept into the house with the energy of someone half her age, took one look at Adrian's face, and laughed. You look like you're about to face a firing squad. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. You always have been. She turned her attention to Mia, who was standing nearby trying to look composed and mostly succeeding. You must be Mia. I'm Caroline, though everyone calls me Carol. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Hayes. Carol, please. Mrs. Hayes makes me feel ancient. She pulled Mia into a hug that looked bone-crushing. Thank you for making my son smile again. I'd almost forgotten what that looked like. Mom, oh hush, Adrian. I'm allowed to be sentimental. She released Mia and bent down as Ellie came barreling around the corner. And there's my favorite granddaughter. I'm your only granddaughter, Ellie pointed out, jumping into her arms, which makes you the favorite by default. It's basic math. They moved to the dining room where Mrs. Chen had prepared a spread that could have fed 20 people. Adrian's mother immediately started asking Mia questions, where she grew up, what she studied, how she ended up working for Adrian, but they felt like genuine interest rather than interrogation. Mia answered honestly, not hiding the hard parts about her mother's illness or the struggles she'd faced. Adrian watched his mother's expression soften as she listened, saw the moment she decided Mia was someone worth keeping around. So you just met in a mall on Christmas Eve? Carol asked. That sounds like something out of a movie. Ellie ran up and hugged her, Adrian said. I was mortified. I was crying like a disaster, Mia added. It was not my finest moment. And now you're here, designing for Adrian's company and having dinner with the family. Carol smiled. Life's funny like that. The best things always seem to happen when we're not looking for them. After dinner, Carol insisted on helping Ellie with a puzzle while Adrian and Mia cleaned up. They worked in their usual rhythm, Mia washing, Adrian drying, and he felt some of his earlier tension drain away. Your mom's wonderful, Mia said. She likes you, I can tell. How? She hasn't asked any pointed questions about your intentions or whether you understand what you're getting into. Trust me, if she didn't approve, you'd know. Mia handed him a plate. And what am I getting into? Adrian dried the plate carefully, buying time to figure out how to answer. A complicated situation. A man with baggage. A kid who gets attached easily. A house that's too big and empty despite 3 people living in it. That's not what I'm getting into. No. She turned to face him, soapy hands dripping on the floor. I'm getting into a life with someone who sees me. Really sees me, not just the parts I try to show. I'm getting a daughter who makes me laugh every single day. I'm getting Sunday mornings and terrible coffee and the chance to build something real with people who actually want me around. Mia. And yeah, it's complicated. Yeah, there's baggage. But Adrian, everyone has baggage. At least yours comes with people I actually want to carry it for. He set down the dish towel and pulled her close, not caring that she was getting soap all over his shirt. I love you. The words came out before he could stop them, before he could overthink or panic or convince himself it was too soon. They just existed, hanging in the air between them, honest and terrifying and completely true. Mia's eyes went wide. What? I love you. I've probably loved you since you sat in that cafe on Christmas Eve and told me the truth about your life instead of pretending everything was fine. I've just been too scared to admit it. Adrian, are you sure? Because it's a big thing to say. I'm sure. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. She kissed him then, deep and urgent and full of everything they'd both been holding back. When they finally broke apart, she was crying. I love you too, she whispered. I've been trying not to because I didn't think I deserved it, but I do. I love you so much it scares me. Good. We can be scared together. They stood there in the kitchen holding each other while water ran in the sink and voices drifted from the living room. And Adrian thought about how sometimes life gave you exactly what you needed in the form you least expected. From the doorway, Carol cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but Ellie wants to show Mia her new drawing, and I've been sent to retrieve her. Mia pulled away, wiping her eyes and laughing. Sorry, we got distracted. I can see that. Carol's smile was knowing. Take your time. I'll keep Ellie occupied. After she left, Adrian turned back to Mia. So what now? Now we've finished the dishes, then we spend time with your family, then we figure out the rest as we go. That simple? That's simple. It wasn't, of course. Nothing about blending lives and hearts and futures was simple. But over the next few months, they figured it out piece by piece. Mia started spending more nights at the house, her toothbrush appearing in the bathroom, her clothes migrating to Adrian's closet. Ellie stopped asking when Mia was coming over and started assuming she'd always be there. They became a unit without ever officially deciding to, the way families often did. There were hard moments. Nights when Adrian woke up from dreams about Sarah and felt guilty for being happy with someone else. Days when Mia's grief hit her out of nowhere, and she couldn't explain why she was crying. Times when Ellie asked questions about her mom that neither of them knew how to answer. But they worked through it, talked about the hard stuff instead of avoiding it, let themselves be imperfect and messy and human. In May, Adrian's company landed a major contract, largely because of Mia's redesign of their marketing materials. At the celebration dinner, his business partner Tom pulled him aside. Whatever you're paying your designer, double it. She's worth it. I know. And Adrian, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you this happy. Don't screw it up. I'm trying not to. Try harder. On a warm evening in June, Adrian found himself standing on the balcony overlooking the city, the same spot where he used to stand alone after Sarah died, trying to remember what it felt like to want to be alive. Mia joined him, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. What are you thinking about? How different things are now. Good different or bad different? Good. Really good. He turned to face her, the city lights painting her face in gold and shadow. Move in with us. Officially. She blinked. What? You're already here most nights. Your apartment's a disaster and you hate the commute. Ellie asks every morning if you're staying for breakfast. Just move in. Be here. Be part of this for real. Adrian, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Mia looked at him for a long moment and he could see her weighing the decision, thinking through all the implications. Then she smiled. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. But I'm paying rent or contributing somehow. I'm not a charity case. How about you keep doing your job, which you're exceptional at, and we call it even? That's not... Mia, let me do this. Let me give you a home because I want to, not because you need one. Her eyes filled with tears. You already gave me a home. The first day I walked through that door, and Ellie hugged me, and you looked at me like I mattered. That was home. Adrian kissed her, slow and sweet, with the city sprawling beneath them, and the future stretching out like an open road. Marry me, he said against her lips. She pulled back, eyes wide. What? Marry me. Not now, not until you're ready, but someday, when we've figured out all the logistics and Ellie's comfortable, and we've proven to ourselves that this is real and lasting. Marry me. That's the world's least romantic proposal. I know. I'll do better later, with a ring and planning and probably a speech I'll forget halfway through because I'll be too nervous. But I wanted you to know that this isn't temporary for me. You're not temporary. Mia laughed through her tears. You're completely insane. Is that a yes? It's an eventually yes. Ask me again in a year. I will. I'll ask you every day until you say yes immediately. That sounds annoying. Probably. You signed up for this, though. She kissed him again, and Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Absolute certainty. Not about the future, which was still uncertain and probably always would be, but certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Inside the house, Ellie called for them, wanting to show them something urgent that probably involved stuffed animals and elaborate backstories. We should go, Mia said, but she didn't move. Yeah, we should. They stood there a moment longer, the city lights below them, the sound of Ellie's voice drifting through the open door, and Adrian thought about how far they'd come from that Christmas Eve in a crowded mall. He thought about grief and healing and the strange way life offered second chances, about how the worst moments could lead to the best ones if you were brave enough to keep going, about 5-year-olds who understood love better than adults, and strangers who became family and houses that stopped feeling empty when you filled them with the right people. Hey, Mia said softly. You okay? Yeah, I really am. And for the first time in 3 years, he meant it completely. They went inside together where Ellie was waiting to show them a card she'd made. It had 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one small, with a rainbow arcing over their heads. That's us, Ellie explained proudly. Our family. Mia picked her up, hugging her tight. It's perfect. I know, I'm really good at art. Mia says I have talent. You do, Mia confirmed. Adrian looked at them, his daughter and this woman he loved, and felt his heart expand in a way that should have been impossible after everything it had been through. Later that night, after Ellie was asleep and Mia had gone to get ready for bed, Adrian stood in his daughter's doorway, watching her breathe. She clutched the handmade snow globe Mia had given her months ago. The glitter long since settled at the bottom, but the rainbow still visible through the glass. I think I did okay, Sarah, he whispered into the darkness. I think you'd approve. There was no answer, of course, just the quiet hum of the house settling and the distant sound of Mia moving around in the bathroom. But Adrian felt at peace in a way he hadn't since the day Sarah died. He'd learned something important over the past 6 months, something he wished he'd understood earlier. Grief and joy could coexist. Loving someone new didn't erase the person you'd lost. Hearts were big enough to hold multiple loves, multiple losses, multiple versions of happiness. Sarah would always be Ellie's mother, would always be his first love, his first loss, the person who shaped him into someone capable of loving this deeply. But Mia was his second chance, his proof that life continued even after the worst happened. His reminder that hope was stronger than fear if you were brave enough to choose it. When he finally went to bed, Mia was already under the covers reading. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was everything he'd been looking for without knowing it. Come here, she said, setting down her book. He climbed in beside her, pulling her close. I love you. I know, you told me earlier. I'm going to keep telling you, every day, until you get sick of hearing it. That's never going to happen. They lay there in comfortable silence, and Adrian felt himself drifting toward sleep, peaceful in a way he hadn't been in years. Adrian? Mia's voice was soft in the darkness. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For seeing me that night in the mall, for not walking away when you could have, for letting me be part of this beautiful, complicated, messy life you're building. Thank you for staying, for being patient with me while I figured out how to let you in. We figured it out together. Yeah, we did. The months that followed were a blur of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary simply because they were shared. Weekend trips to the park. Ellie's 6th birthday party, where Mia organized activities and Adrian burned the cake. Holidays that felt less empty. Work projects they collaborated on, arguing good-naturedly about color schemes and design choices. Mia officially moved in on a Saturday in July, her few belongings fitting easily into the mansion that suddenly felt exactly the right size. Ellie helped unpack, claiming executive decisions on where everything should go. Your books go next to Daddy's books, she declared, because you're both smart, and books are for smart people. What about your books? Mia asked. My books are fun books. different shelf. They found a rhythm, the three of them. Mornings were chaos, getting Ellie ready for school, making lunches, searching for lost shoes. Evenings were quieter, homework at the kitchen table, dinner together, bedtime stories that Mia and Adrian took turns reading. It wasn't perfect. They argued about stupid things like whose turn it was to do laundry and whether Ellie could have dessert before finishing her vegetables. Mia had bad days when grief ambushed her. Adrian had moments of panic where he convinced himself this was all going to fall apart. But they worked through it, and every argument ended with apologies, every bad day with comfort, every moment of panic with reassurance that, yes, this was real, and no, it wasn't going anywhere. A year after that conversation on the balcony, Adrian planned his proposal properly. He took Mia back to the mall where they'd met, cleaned up and decorated for another Christmas season, and led her to the exact spot where Ellie had first hugged her. "This is where it started," he said, pulling out a ring he'd spent weeks choosing. "Right here, you were crying and broken and alone, and my daughter decided you needed us. Turns out she was right, but not in the way she thought. We needed you just as much." Mia was already crying, her hands pressed to her mouth. "You've made us whole again," Adrian continued, his own voice shaking. "You've shown Ellie what it means to be strong and kind. You've shown me that it's okay to love again, to hope again, to build a future that doesn't feel like I'm betraying the past. So I'm asking you properly this time. Mia Carter, will you marry me?" "Yes?" She was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and when they kissed, Ellie appeared from where she'd been hiding with Mrs. Chen, cheering loudly enough to attract attention from passing shoppers. "I knew it! I knew you were going to get married!" Mia scooped her up, the three of them wrapped in a hug while strangers applauded, and the Christmas music played and the world kept spinning the way it always did. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony in the backyard of the mansion, with Ellie as flower girl and Carol crying in the front row. It was simple and perfect and nothing like Adrian's first wedding, which somehow felt right. During his vows, Adrian looked at Mia and said, "You taught me that endings don't have to be final, that loss doesn't have to define us, that it's possible to build something beautiful from broken pieces if you're willing to try." Mia's vows were shorter, but they hit just as hard. "You gave me a family when I'd lost mine. You gave me hope when I'd forgotten what that felt like. You gave me a home. That's everything." When the officiant pronounced them married, Ellie cheered louder than anyone, and Adrian thought about how far they'd all come from that Christmas Eve. Life didn't become perfect after they got married. It remained complicated and messy and sometimes difficult. Adrian still had days when he missed Sarah so much it hurt. Mia still struggled with guilt about her mother. Ellie still asked hard questions about death and loss and why people she loved had to leave. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. 5 years after that night in the mall, Adrian stood in his kitchen watching Mia teach Ellie, now 10 years old, how to make the pot roast her mother used to make. They were laughing about something, flour on their faces, completely absorbed in the moment. He thought about the man he'd been 5 years ago, hollow and numb and convinced he was better off alone. He barely recognized that person anymore. Grief had taught him that love was a risk, but Mia and Ellie had taught him that it was a risk worth taking. That building a life with people meant accepting that you might lose them someday, but that the alternative, living in fear of loss, wasn't really living at all. "Daddy, come help!" Ellie called. "Mia says you're good at chopping vegetables." "She's lying. I'm terrible at it." "Well, you're doing it anyway. Family rule." He joined them at this counter, and Mia handed him a knife and an onion with a smile that still made his heart skip. "How'd I get so lucky?" he murmured. "You didn't," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "You just finally let yourself be found." That night, after dinner and dishes and getting Ellie to bed, Adrian and Mia ended up back on the balcony where he'd first asked her to move in. The city sprawled beneath them, millions of lives unfolding in windows and streets and spaces they'd never see. "Do you ever think about that night?" Mia asked. "When we first met?" "All the time." "What do you think would have happened if Ellie hadn't run up to me?" Adrian considered that. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe we would have walked past each other and that would have been it." "That's a sad thought." "Yeah, but we didn't walk past each other. Ellie ran toward you and I followed, and everything changed." Mia leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding on to this moment because he'd learned that moments were all anyone really had. "I'm glad she ran," Mia said softly. "Me too." They stood there as the city lights flickered and the night deepened and life continued in its messy, beautiful, unpredictable way. And Adrian thought about how sometimes the best things in life came from the worst moments. How pain could transform into purpose. How strangers could become family. How love could bloom in the ruins of loss if you gave it enough time and courage. He thought about broken people finding each other in crowded malls and choosing, day after day, to build something whole. He thought about his daughter asleep upstairs, safe and loved and surrounded by more family than she'd had in years. He thought about Sarah, hoping she knew he'd kept his promise to stay alive, to stay human, to let people in, even when it scared him. Most of all, he thought about Mia. This woman who'd been crying alone on Christmas Eve and was now standing beside him as his wife, his partner, his proof that second chances were real if you were brave enough to take them. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky we are." "That's a lot of things." "It's a lot of feelings." She laughed, and the sound filled something in him that had been empty for too long. Inside, the house waited, warm and full, and finally, truly home. Not because of the expensive furniture or the perfect decorations or the size of the rooms, but because of the people who lived there, the love that filled the spaces, the family they'd chosen to become. Adrian kissed the top of Mia's head and made a silent promise to himself to never take this for granted, to remember that happiness was fragile and precious and worth fighting for, to keep choosing love, even when it was scary, to be present for every moment, good and bad. Because moments were all anyone got, and he'd wasted too many already. "Come on," Mia said, pulling him toward the door. "It's late, and tomorrow Ellie has her school thing, and we promised we'd both be there." "Both of us?" "Both of us. That's what parents do." "Parents!" The words settled over Adrian like a warm blanket. Somewhere along the way, Mia had stopped being his wife or girlfriend or partner and had simply become Ellie's mom in all the ways that mattered. Not replacing Sarah, nothing could do that, but building something new alongside the memory. They went inside together, turning off lights and checking locks and doing all the mundane things that made up a life. And as Adrian climbed into bed beside the woman he loved, in the house that had finally stopped echoing with emptiness, he realized something important. He'd been wrong all those years ago when Sarah died. He'd thought the best part of his life was over, that he'd used up his allotment of happiness and all that remained was survival. But life wasn't a finite resource. Joy wasn't something you ran out of. Love didn't come with expiration dates. It just kept going, evolving, transforming into new shapes if you let it. And sometimes, if you were very, very lucky, it gave you exactly what you needed in the form of a crying stranger in a mall and a 5-year-old who knew that broken people needed hugs. "I love you," he whispered into the darkness. Mia's sleepy voice came back. "I love you too. Now go to sleep." He smiled and closed his eyes. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Adrian Hayes slept without nightmares, without guilt, without the weight of wondering what came next. He slept like a man who'd finally learned that the greatest thing he'd ever built wasn't his company or his fortune or his carefully controlled empire. It was this: the family sleeping under his roof, the love that filled his home, the second chance he'd almost been too afraid to take. And that, he thought, as sleep claimed him, was worth everything.